We here at Robin Hood Radio have really forged a great relationship with the Hotchkiss Library here in Sharon. Every year when they have their book signing in August, we broadcast live from there. We also do a lot of great interviews over the course of the year. Uh, and we also have a great show on Sundays in between 9:30 and 10 called the Cocoa Club from the Hotchkiss Library, where we get a story read to us, and with that story, there is also a recipe. And it's for family listening, and we do that on Sundays in between 9:30 and 10 o'clock as well. And coming up at the Hotchkiss Library, Bill Noble, author of The Spirit of Place, The Making of a New England Garden, will be doing a Zoom, actually, book event on Thursday, January 21st at 7 p.m. And we've got Bill with us on the telephone this morning. Bill, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Marshall.
Well, we're in the wintertime now, even though we're inching out of it because it's getting lighter and lighter all the time in the morning. But one thing I found out about gardeners, and now it's rubbed off on me, if you want to get through the winter, think about gardening and think about when things are blooming an event. Let's talk about the spirit of place, the making of a New England garden. First of all, your history, Bill. How did you get interested in gardening and about writing for gardening?
I got interested in gardening when, sort of early on in my late 20s, early 30s, when I had a series of jobs that were all keeping me inside, and I discovered I really wanted to be outside. And so I wanted to figure out a way of working outside, and I was also interested in vegetable gardening. And so my first foray was market gardening. I grew 10 acres of vegetables in the upper Connecticut River Valley and sold them through farm stand and farmers markets, and I was really happy to clear $5,000 at it my first year. But a little bit later on, when I was still only clearing $5,000, I decided I need to find another way of being outside and working with my hands. And I was very lucky to be offered a seasonal temporary position working at the St. Gaudens National Historic Site in Cornish, New Hampshire. And I bet many of your listeners have been there. And Cornish in the 1890s was a gardening mecca. Some of the best garden designers and artists of the country were working and gardening in Cornish, and that's where I got to learn.
You know, it's interesting listening to you talk. One of our most popular shows we have here on Robin Hood Radio is A Way to Garden with Margaret Roach. And it's a year-round show, and people just flock to it. Now, I see also that you worked with the Garden Conservancy, right?
I did. I was director of preservation for the Garden Conservancy, for 15 years, and they were based in Cold Spring, New York. So, not far away from you, not far away from Margaret, and a location where there are many excellent gardens that the Garden Conservancy has opened through its Open Days program, but also not that far from Hollister House Garden, which is one of my favorite gardens in the country, and a garden that I helped get on its feet as a public garden when I was at the Conservancy, and I have stayed very involved. I love that garden, and I love the people involved with it.
You know, everybody looks forward to the different nature conservancy, the garden conservancies, the open houses like that Margaret and all around that go on in Connecticut, New York, and Massachusetts. The conservancy is it's just a great organization. Now, the book that we're going to be talking about on January 21st, The Spirit of Place, The Making of a New England Garden. That book, from what I see, is about the garden you've created and the 20 years that you've put into it.
Yes, but the story I tell is also one of the gardens that influenced me in the making of this garden. I think I had sort of two main strains going on in making this garden. One was that I really wanted to be true to the place, and it's a 1830s farmhouse with still fields, open fields, and barn foundations, and I wanted to make a garden that felt right and honest for this part of Vermont. But I was also with the Garden Conservancy traveling and seeing some of the best gardens in the country and meeting some of the best gardeners around. And they would say, well, maybe you ought to try this, or here, I'll give you that. And so the garden also became a collector's passion. And so I've tried to balance those two strains for the last 20 or more years.
I think one of the interesting things about listening to not only Mark, but like talking with people like you, and what's great about what's happening at the Hotchkiss Library on Thursday at 7 o'clock. By the way, if listeners out there want to join in the Zoom event, just go to hotchkisslibraryofsharon.org and you'll get directions how to do this. But your creative process that you have as an individual, and let's say Margaret and other gardeners, I love the way you share your creative process with people to implement in their gardens, and obviously a beginning gardener can learn so much from someone like you about the creation process. It's not just sticking some plants in the ground.
Well, one of the best resources for gardeners in this country is Margaret Roach and A Way to Garden. We welcomed people to come visit the garden this year. I can tell you a little bit more about how we did that, but so many people have found their way to the book and to me and to this garden through Margaret's podcast and an article she did in the New York Times in the summer. And it's really struck me as to how many people really rely on Margaret for good gardening information, not just the how-to, but the why, and as she says, the woo-hoo. And I can't stress how much she has given to me and to so many other people.
But when I look at people who love to garden, whether they're just beginning or they're like you or Margaret, where they've got many, many, many years behind it, is that the way you share your information amongst one another. It's like you can be a beginning gardener, and then someone could listen to you talk and ask questions. And it's like golf. You could have a lousy golfer and a good golfer because there's a handicapping system. But it seems like gardeners have a certain way to get their ideas across to other gardeners, and unlike just about any other activity that I've seen.
Well, not just to other gardeners, but one of the purposes of the book was to reach out to younger people who maybe have an interest in growing plants, and I mean maybe they're in the cities, or maybe they are moving from Brooklyn onto a farm in upstate New York. But one of the things that I saw when I was writing the book was that the gardens that I worked with the Garden Conservancy are only going to survive long term if younger people take an interest in them. So I was particularly interested in reaching out and encouraging people who were maybe around the age when I first started making this garden, my late 30s or early 40s.
All right, we only have a few moments left right now. If you were to give advice to somebody who is thinking about getting into gardening or actually putting their garden skills for the first time into effect and planning for a garden, what advice would you give them heading into the gardening season?
Well, use your eyes and your intelligence and your passions, and look around. I mean, look widely to see what others are doing now, but also what others have done in the past, and especially the recent past. There's been such and the Garden Conservancy Open Days program is a good way of doing this. There's and with social media, there are just so many ways of exposing ourselves to different garden visions, and we each have our own passions, our own interests, and we should really follow those. And then we need to learn the hows and the whys of making plants grow and plants grow together, and to produce a garden that will bring us pleasure.
Well, once again, everybody, Bill is going to be at a special event for the Hotchkiss Library in Sharon. It's his book, The Spirit of Place, The Making of a New England Garden. It's a Zoom presentation from the Hotchkiss Library in Sharon on Thursday, beginning at 7 p.m. If you want to register for that event, hotchkisslibraryofsharon.org. Bill, thanks for taking a few minutes and joining us this morning, and I know you're probably licking your chops for springtime.
Yes, watching the snow come down this morning, but the days are getting longer, as you said. So we've turned the corner.
All right, Bill. Hey, I want you to have a good day, and everybody, once again, this is the event for Hotchkiss Library. Check in with them for more details. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Marshall.
There is once again Bill Noble, author of The Spirit of Place, The Making of a New England Garden. Thursday, a Zoom event at the Hotchkiss Library in Sharon at 7 p.m.